Ako na lang? Okay, in 3, 2, 1, go. Good evening, IGTV, and welcome to Thursdays with Toni
and Trish.
For tonight's episode, we will be talking about career. Basically, to sum it up, it's gonna be how it started and how it's going. So, Trish, to start it off, I wanted us to talk about first our career aspirations back when we were still younger, or specifically when we were still in high school, because I know that even if we are currently enjoying being HR professionals, we probably had different dreams when we were younger. So, care to start?
Well, actually, when I was younger, way back, I really wanted to be a doctor, but I realized when it comes to seeing blood and poops, I usually can't stand it. Then when I got into high school, alam mo, ito talaga yung time of my life na hindi ko alam yung gusto ko.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I really wanted in life. That's why I understand people who are still trying to find out, because I was once there too. And it's okay when things do not go your way, when you don't know what to do next. I think that's the best time for you to stop and see first your strengths and weaknesses. I didn't rush myself because I might make a wrong decision once I rush myself. So I took my time and I just tried to research the things that is in line with my interests. So eventually, fast forward, I took HR management and I met you. What about you?
For me, I think most friends of mine, including you, are probably aware of my history. When I was still in high school, I was part of the dance troupe, and so I was very passionate about dancing, performing, and thought, why not make a career out of it? Because I learned about Benilde having a program for performing arts. Unfortunately, well, my background is more of Chinese cultural dance of some sort, and then some modern pop kind of dance. And then Benilde had this consortium with Ballet School of the Philippines. And my younger self thought, hey, I'm so passionate about dancing, why not give it a try? I mean, even if I don't have a background in ballet, I mean, that kind of thinking where if you really want something, you'll learn it along the way. However, that's not the case because, despite passing the exam, I had to go through a screening in CCP because of the consortium. And of course, I did not pass that, which meant I had to switch courses. And looking back, I recall whenever teachers and classmates would ask me, hey, what are you going to take up in college? And whenever I tell them, I'm going to do performing arts major in dance, they would always ask me like, why? It's such a waste. Like, what's going to be your career after that? And of course, my younger self was kind of hurt because, you're talking about your dream, your passion. And having those types of reaction go your way, I mean, it's not very helpful for you to build really that confidence and sustain your dream. So, but anyway, it's a funny thing. And like you've mentioned, eventually we ended up taking up HR management, which I do not regret at the tiniest bit. Yes. And I recall since basically I still graduated early compared to our people our age, right? And I realized, all right, I took up HR management, so why not like try a job for a first job, something that is in line with our course. And I said to myself, I wanted to experience the start at the very bottom, like a minimum wage earner and see how it goes. Because the first job I landed was just near home. And the advantage of that to me is that I will save up for lunch money and travel, right? So I grabbed that opportunity. It's a recruitment agency firm, and I was part of the administration department. It was a great job for a fresh grad because I somewhat got a glimpse of how like the recruitment process or recruitment journey happens in a small firm. And I stayed there for I think about 5 months. How about you? How was your first job? What went on there?
Well, actually started my first job few weeks before my graduation. As soon as we passed our theses, I realized that if I really wanted to have a job right after graduation, I must apply, of course, in advance. And I was so afraid to be unemployed as I graduate, and I wasn't born privileged. So the urge to find a job was really urgent for me. It was something that is really important to me, and I was afraid to run out of my savings because I really have savings out of just my allowance. So I applied in advance, didn't rush myself, but I just made an advanced plan. And then eventually I found this company posted in Job Street. And then eventually I got interviewed, I got in, and I became a junior recruitment specialist. And I really enjoyed my job there. I do sourcing and screening to corporate roles, and it really opened my eyes in terms of the recruitment world. And that's when I started to really love recruitment, and I saw it as something that I wanted to do for a long period of time. So yeah, I really enjoyed there, and it was a BPO industry, and I learned how to be agile because it's a fast-paced world. So yeah, I became really good at sourcing. I started to enhance my communication skills, and yeah, so on. And I became now a talent advisor. It's still in line with how I started before.
Yeah, but how was the transition from your first job to your next job?
Well, it was actually out of my line. It was actually a job in Singapore. I actually took over a year to accept that offer. I'm just glad that it was still open when I got in, because it was actually just for a limited time. I think they only hired for 2 to 3 years, and I'm glad I'm one of the last batch who got in. It was not in line, but it paid really well. And as mentioned earlier, I wasn't born privileged, so I took that as a way for me to buy a house for my family. My dad was against it initially because he doesn't want me to require to buy a house, but I was really persuasive. I insisted, and so he said, okay, if this is what you really want, if God put that in your heart, then go ahead. And then eventually I got there. It wasn't easy, I tell you, but it pays well, so I don't really complain. I just complain for the lack of sleep, but that's just it. Eventually I went home with a new house, new location, and it was worth it. Really, a career is not really something that is linear. You can be in a journey that's full of adventure, but it's just how you make the most out of it, out of every adventure. What about you, Toni?
For me, initially, I left my first job because back then I was thinking of pursuing post-studies already, and that's like a few months after I graduated. However, there was an opportunity in a firm where my father was working as an engineering consultant, and they were actually looking for an HR assistant because they just started having an HR department. And so my father said to give it a try because it will be a good opportunity for me as well to practice real HR. So it was a great experience. People were very kind. I really enjoyed all of the assistance I've given to all the employees, specifically stuff relating to compensation and benefits and employee relations or employee engagement. I stayed there initially for, I think, almost a year. And then I actually left because I was eyeing on a marketing opportunity, which was paying well that time. I even got interviewed there. However, it did not push through because I think they had to put on hold their recruitment. And then when I was still jobless is when I actually visited you in Singapore. And then when I returned from Singapore, they actually offered me like a consultancy contract for about 3 weeks where it's a short stint, but I was able to learn a lot because I worked closely with Japanese researchers. So I was like an assistant to them in going to different meetings about agriculture kind of research. So I was able to learn how Japanese people work. You know, they're very dedicated, very hardworking. It's a great experience. And after that, I was still jobless because I was looking for, I don't know, an opportunity probably that I think will be a fit for me. But then since it's kind of taking a while, and then the HR manager whom I've been close to really reached out to me like the following year and learned that I was still jobless. So he offered me to, hey, why not go back? Because I still need someone to run the department. So we went back there and I lasted for I think almost 2 years. However, like this the last few months that I was there, I was assigned to a project. Although it's not an HR job, I was at least I was able to be exposed to a project that the company is having. It's a good exposure. I was again working with Japanese people and Filipino consultants, engineers, architects. People were very kind, so it's really a great experience, I'd say, because more than anything, more than the job and all that, I value the most the people I've worked with. So there.
Yeah,
However,
that's great.
mhm, sorry. So
Go ahead.
and now probably the reason why I left my job there was because for for a while when I was in that second company, I was eyeing on getting into my current company because I wanted to be exposed in a multinational organization because that engineering consultancy firm is an international organization. So I wanted to widen my horizon and all that and experience working in a fast paced environment, to which my current organization is. So when I had the opportunity to enter a recruitment job in my current organization, I grabbed it. Even though the catch is it's a night shift and it's gonna be a first night shift job for me. And I thought, why not give it a try? Because probably I'd be able to get used to it since I'm kind of an evening person. And I can just say that everything worked out perfectly because I'm still with my current employer. I'm still doing the same job, but there had been, more exposures, more opportunities within the job. So I'm just very grateful. How about you? So, from your experience from Singapore, how did you eventually land the job that you're currently in?
Well, I must say it wasn't easy because I got unemployed for 3 months. But I took that opportunity to rest because my job in Singapore was really tiring. And I was just praying and believing that all things will work together for good eventually. And while I was unemployed, I enjoyed my rest while also applying slowly to different companies online. And then eventually, someone called me, and that's my current employer, Change Healthcare. And during the interview, my first interview was actually to the director already because it was an urgent hiring. I didn't go through the usual recruitment process, so I eventually had an interview with an HR manager already back then. So one of the toughest questions was when she asked me, "Are you sure you want to return to recruitment? Because based on your resume, you already worked for sales. Are you sure you want to go back?" And I am happy that I was able to pull that off when she asked that question. And she saw that I had post studies in HR management besides my bachelor's degree. So I said, you know what? If you can see my educational background from the very start of my studies until I had my intern, until I got my first job, it was really HR related. So I really wanted to go back. And my job in Singapore was something that helped me learn. Personally, it was more on the personal development, but when it comes to career development, I wanted to learn it in the recruitment field. And so I am happy that she was convinced with my answer, and then she gave me a chance to return in the recruitment industry. And Right now, fast forward, I still interview candidates in the US. It was quite a challenge to transition in Singlish to American English because for 2 years I've been speaking Singlish because I must communicate with the locals right
Yeah.
there. And it was hard, but I had to unlearn things. And yeah, I don't think you still see me speaking in English, right?
Not anymore.
Yeah, na anymore la. Okay. So, what about career milestones, Tony?
Mhm.
I believe that you already are in a good company. You are a good shell. So, I see how you love your job. Any career milestones that you already have achieved?
I think I wanted to include with this career milestones the fact that I never thought I'd get into Shell with how I performed in my interview because I thought of it as somewhat a disaster in the sense that I was unfortunately late because of things I do not have control over. And I was so embarrassed because the interviewer will be my future line manager. And he was an American, he was an expat. And so, I was thinking, this is kind of a red flag because, you're a few minutes late and you're not actually just a few minutes. I'm really late in that interview, but, we still pushed through. And probably they saw that I was catching my breath when I went inside the interview room because of a lot of circumstances. But there was also another question that I somewhat had a hard time answering because I think I spaced out for a moment there. But eventually it turned out okay. And I'd say it's a milestone in the sense that probably sometimes when we think that things are going the other way, it's actually going in our favor. We're just not seeing it yet because we're probably overthinking, we're being pessimistic and all that. But I'd say milestone in a sense that if only I also knew that I was doing okay in that interview. I think that's the biggest challenge actually, nailing the interview, right? Especially if you really want to land the job. But apart from that, I'd say one of my greatest milestones in my career would be being able to build rapport with people I work with. I think sometimes it can be seen as something not that major, but really putting focus on how you build relationships with the organizations you've been into is a big step for you to be able to progress in your career as well. Because I've heard so many stories about people working with people who are very capable and skilled with what they do, but are not okay with their like interpersonal relationships. It greatly affects how you work with people, right? And how you carry on with your job. So I'd say that's a milestone. I'd say somewhat confidently that I was able to build those good relationships with the people I've worked with. Also, milestone being able to catch up with how a fast-paced environment or organization works, because I know that we all have our learning curves, and I did struggle in the beginning adjusting to that fast-paced environment. But I'd say I'm happy I'm where I am right now. And probably the fact that I'm in currently in an organization that allows me to explore different opportunities on how I can develop myself professionally and personally. How about you, Trish?
Career, when it comes to career milestone, I say it really kickstart when I already worked in Singapore. It didn't help me really much on my professional side, but it helped me personally and mentally, which eventually benefited my career development. It wasn't my dream job, it was sales. I'm an introvert, so imagine how intentional I must be all the time to make a sale. But it equipped me to be professionally resilient, to learn to respect different cultures and mindsets, which helps me now that I'm already in my dream job as a talent advisor. It helped me to respect differences. It helped me to even appreciate the difference of each of my teammates. I know we all have different sets of beliefs. But that's where I learned how to respect and appreciate that in our differences there is still something to look forward to.
Definitely. And
Okay, so
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, go.
so we've talked about how we transitioned from one job to the other. We've talked about some career milestones, but I know that one interesting fact as well is are the challenges that we've faced, because for every organization that we've been a part to, there are there will always be some challenging stuff. And I wanted to ask you first on what really comes to mind when we talk about challenges encountered.
Well, no, it's not surprising that I must tell you that it's people. It's one of the challenges I encounter. It is ironic because we're HRs. I'm an HR. I deal with people who are applying. I'm in the recruitment field. But really, people are the hardest thing to manage. But I love my job. And despite the challenges and its imperfections, I still do it because I love it. And I think that's the real meaning of love. When you really love something, despite of its imperfections, you still do it because you find yourself growing in it. What about you?
I would have to agree with you actually, because I think in every job that we do, there will always be job related challenges, and they will always fall under the learning curve on the individual, because we all have our timings in absorbing the things that we are learning. But really, challenging people are at the top of my list, because like what they say, you can't control people, but you can definitely control how you deal with them, right? And that's a big challenge, especially if you're just starting to be aware of how you control the things that you have control over. So definitely agree with you on that. But aside from challenges, one of the important things that we have in every role that we go into is learnings. And for me, I'd say in relation to the challenges encountered, I think one of the biggest learnings is when you are confronted by a difficult person. Normally, the initial reaction would be to become reactive, especially if you're also having a bad day or if you're not in a good place or state of mind. But the learning I appreciated is when I realized that I can always pause before responding, especially if the message is strong. Because if I will answer immediately, then I will just like be in the same level or headspace with that person when he or she is writing the message. And we do not want that, because as much as we can, we would want to be the bigger person in every situation. So taking a pause, knowing that I should not respond when I'm feeling emotional, is one of the biggest learnings that I really value. How about you?
To me is to just enjoy every journey that you take. It may not be ideal all the time, but you find joy in everything. And I
Mhm.
think that's the true test of character when you're not faced with the most pleasing moment, but you still choose to be joyful and grateful.
That is so perfect. I definitely agree,
Thank
especially
you.
especially in this difficult time. That is true.
Yes.
And to close off our session, I wanted us to share what opportunities for growth we've seen in our previous experiences or even to our current roles. Why don't you start it off?
Opportunities for growth. Well, actually, I'm still thinking about it because there's so many things. Can you go first?
Okay, I think generally in every role that we get into, it's more on us and not just the organization, showing us or giving us those opportunities for growth. Because if we will try to be creative, we can actually see
True.
any opportunity for growth in everything that we're given. So for example, if you're taught a certain process and then you really go through it and realize that, hey, I think we can improve this to make this more effective or more efficient, then that's one opportunity for growth for you, because definitely you'll bring that. That's going to be your credential when you apply for a new role, that
Mm,
you're someone that has a continuous improvement mindset. And line managers want that, right? So probably that's one thing I can think of at this point. How about you? Have you thought of something already?
Yes.
Mhm.
Actually, along the way, you gave me an idea. That's true. You cannot just rely on your company for growth. I think that's too immature for us to think that the company should be the only thing that is your source of growth, not just financially, but also personally
Yeah.
and professionally. I think at the end of the day, it is still up to you. It is how you make the most out of what you have been giving. You have in yourself, and yes, during actually off season in hiring, I took that opportunity to learn online courses. It was during pre-pandemic, but
Mm-hmm.
that gave me an idea on how online learning is all about, and also in building your personal brand. It's not enough that you just work without catering your creative side. And
Yeah.
right now, you see me speaking to different companies online, and also you see me have my podcast. I really think that when it comes to growth, you can actually do it by yourself. You can
Mm-hmm.
actually learn online, not just, find something in your company. Although it is a good thing because my company provides LinkedIn learning.
Yeah.
But I think it is still up to you on how you choose to grow and also learn. So for me, there are so many things to learn. And at the end of the day, it will benefit you pa rin naman.
Totally agree. To close off our session, any key takeaways or advice that you want to share with our listeners?
Never stop learning. For me, that's to me the golden rule in life. We never stop learning. Always be open minded.
Yes, short but sweet indeed. For me, I know that in every job that we have, there are days when we are down. But please always remember that, when we talk about growth, sometimes it's just a bad day, but never a bad life. So please don't stop learning. Thank you very much for watching, for listening this episode. Again, this has been Thursdays with Tony.
And Trish!
Bye.